My father committed suicide today. 11/16/2019. Today my father committed suicide by firing a gunshot into his head while parked behind a church in his work vehicle. He left a 10-page suicide note full of love for his family and friends, a blood splatter on the front page, a claim that he was a victim to Big Pharma in the middle of the note, and a list of what he found to be his inadequacies on the very back of the notebook. He viewed himself as ugly things in that moment. He made that clear by labeling himself ugly, unhealthy, alone, and more. He wasn't any of the things he listed. His perspective was warped and he reached a hell no one could help him escape. He had been struggling with a deep depression for the past few months, but had fostered an amount of poor habits for as long as I remember. Amongst them were poor diet and leisure choices, and subscription to negative ideologies relating to current events, politics, and people. He had recently attempted to switch his medication in hopes he could eventually not rely on any antidepressants. I had also tried to give him a psychedelic mushroom experience a few weeks ago, but he experienced no effects at all. He was desperate for a way out of depression. He was willing to try any medical regimen, pill, or operation, but he didn't seem to be able to gather the strength necessary to make lifestyle changes. Prior to this bout of depression, and for as long as I can remember, he had struggled with a very painful gut condition that remained undiagnosed by dozens of medical professionals. They couldn't find anything wrong with him, but he never didn't feel pain in his stomach. My dad had a poor relationship with his father, who had a poor relationship with his father. My grandfather didn't seem to open up for emotional discourse, and that passed on to my dad. My grandfather didn't seem to love my sweet grandmother, who had MS. My dad also had a brother who died of cancer before I was born. I think this is the event that caused the creation of many of his bad habits, as I'm told his brother was his best friend and that they did everything together. My dad took care of my grandmother when my grandfather died, and provided her his own home and a caregiver while he lived with her, but struggled to treat her with decency. He would often berate her when she had an accident, or was in his way as he was walking about the house. All of that being said, that is not an accurate way to view my father. All people have struggles, demons, and shortcomings. He was viewed by his friends and family as larger than life, uplifting, and a source of endless humor. He had more friends than anyone else I can think of. Random groups of people gathered around him when he was at the gym to listen to his jokes. I have subconsciously told many of his jokes throughout the course of my life, but never gave him credit for his humor. The truth is, he was actually pretty damn funny. His girlfriend told him that he gave her the best years of her life, and he reciprocated that sentiment to her. He always praised me for how smart he thought I was and how confident and proud he was in me. He worked hard, almost to a fault. He made the cities he worked for safer and held up his end of society's bargain. He gave his friends what many of them gave him, a helping hand at a moment's notice. Up until today, I was never impressed with my father. I didn't see the deeper causations of his shortcomings. I thought he overate, over-sexualized, possessed ideologies, succumbed to lethargy, and failed to emotionally express himself, all as a result of his own choice. This isn't true. My dad was never equipped by the people around him to handle the burden he was facing, which was primarily caused by not being equipped for any possible emotional burden. Today I am extremely impressed and proud of my father. I saw the family he created from 3 separate families gather and love each other for him. I saw the emotional impact his friendship had on his friends. I realized that he did the very best he could with what he was given. He handled his circumstance as well as anyone could have. I was rough on Dad during this depression. I realize I was. I told him there was no shortcuts. I told him there was no going back to his old life, because his old life of seemingly happiness, but still the cultivation of poor habits, was the reason he was depressed. I told him even if he could go back, I would reject it, because I didn't want him to be that way. I read to him from a few books. I got him in to see my therapist, but I don't think he returned for a second visit. I meditated with him once. I made him a meal to show him he could do it on his own. I gave him a specific book to follow along with as the audiobook played in his headphones. He only read, to my knowledge, 3 chapters before his death. I believe if he would have finished it, he would not have done this. My father didn't know how to take care of himself within his own head, and no one provided him with the tools necessary to be able to learn how to do that. No matter what I or anyone said to him, he wasn't able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. This frustrated me. It shouldn't have. I get it now. I told him the truth. I told him a pill didn't cause this and wouldn't fix it. I knew medication surely wasn't helping, but I knew his antidepressant dependency was a symptom, not the cause of his depression. I told him the only way out was to create routines that would be miserable hard work, for weeks before they would begin to reveal themselves as good. I accept my responsibility in his death, although people tell me I shouldn't. They all should too. If I wanted to help him more in the moment, I would have. I did not. I neglected him when I should have been with him. I didn't call him many days. I isolated myself from him for months earlier in the year, which could have single-handedly created this increased depressive state. If I had considered he was capable of suicide, my approach would be kinder and more vulnerable. I do believe I could have kept him alive. This is my burden, and I will not be changing my mind for the foreseeable future. It is hard to picture my father pulling a trigger on himself. It is hard to picture my father immensely hating himself in his final moments. It is hard to know he considered himself a burden to his loved ones during his depression. He was not a burden. It was difficult. It hurt. It was stressful. We selfishly made it about us on accident. But he wasn't a burden. This is a burden. I didn't know much about my dad because he was very emotionally closed off. My goal is to learn more about him for the rest of my life, so I can understand why everyone hailed him as a hero while he was alive instead of how I only see that now that he is gone. It's painfully obvious now he was a lovely man. He was an absolute stud. He had a special smile. He had a community that was magnetically constructed from his personality built around him. He gave me everything I needed to be successful, and is the sole reason I am equipped to handle the tragedy. He was pure selflessness incarnate to the ones he loved. He was moral and knew the difference from right and wrong. He was a man of leisure, outdoorsmanship, and sportsmanship. He is somewhere now where he is calm and his anxieties no longer plague him. He is where he is most comfortable. He will make that clear to his loved ones in due time. I share this with the Stoicism Reddit out of respect for the users and what we try our best to practice. I know I can't change this event. My goal now is to improve and set the ultimate example for others to keep them out of this hell. Thank you for listening. Edit 5/19/2020. The response to this post has been overwhelmingly positive and beautiful. I'd like to reach out a friendly hand to any who come across it who need to talk. As many direct messages since this post's creation have been exchanged between myself and lovely people paying condolences and seeking advice for their own tragedies. A few days ago I deleted my post history, including all of the comment replies I made in this thread so I could transition my casual Reddit commentary to a separate account not tied to my trademarked username, which I use on many platforms. If you have any questions at all, or just need a friend to reach out to, do not hesitate to DM me. If you enjoy this type of content and would like to see more of it and support the channel, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications.